Tribal leaders, and thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Sarah Cleaver, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the policy analysts with the Oregon Department of Human Services SNAP Employment and Training Program. I really appreciate your time and attention while I'm sharing information about the SNAP ENT program, SNAP Employment and Training, and outline our request for consultation on the SNAP ENT provider proposal, which informs our SNAP ENT state plan. So during this presentation, I will be reviewing the SNAP ENT program, talking about the different services that are available, how the program operates, the impacts of these services for tribal members, and then dive into some key pieces of the proposal in which we are requesting consultation. So to begin, I'm just going to provide a overview of the SNAP ENT programs as a whole. So, SNAP ENT programs develop different resources which aim to provide individuals opportunities and access to education, training, and employment services. These services are intended to offer individuals really a pathway towards economic stability. There's a few goals that the Oregon SNAP ENT programs have. So that's one, to offer employment or training or education services to anyone who is eligible across the state. Our another goal is to ensure equitable access and really to offer these services to underserved populations, meaning folks who might not traditionally have had access in the past. We also strive to provide a continuum of services for families who might be transitioning off of TANF and collaborate those individual or connect those individuals with different SNAP ENT programming for some continued access. And finally, a major goal is just to develop the resources for individuals and families to have a safety net, to have some stabilization, and to provide a pathway out of poverty. So, like I mentioned, SNAP ENT programs offer employment and training services across the state. There are two distinct SNAP ENT programs. So, one is STEP, that is SNAP Training and Employment Program, and the other is ABOD. You might have heard about this in the news. So, that's able bodied adults without dependents under 14. ABOD is a program for individuals who might be subject to SNAP benefit time limit. Not getting into that today, but the focus of both SNAP ENT programs is really to assist anyone who is receiving SNAP in improving their skills that can lead to some career development or financial independence. Oregon is committed to equity in SNAP ENT programs through service delivery, through engagement, with collaboration, and through strategic goal setting. So again, while we do have two different SNAP ENT programs today, I'm really just focusing on STEP and how we can work together to make sure the STEP program across Oregon is meeting the needs of all individuals. So Oregon created a STEP provider network that is made up of contracted service providers to help people find jobs, to get training, to receive support in ways that focuses on their individual needs and their experiences. The program really is designed to help people become financially stable. So, the SNAP ENT policy team, myself, and a couple other folks, we retain oversight of the program and we collaborate with other ODHS programs like TANF, with different community groups, with tribes to make sure that these program goals are met. Currently, this year, we have 56 STEP providers, and each one of those offers a different array of services to support folks in achieving their career goals. This could be educational services or job searching support, or offering some supportive items to help people meet their goals like work clothing, transportation support, or even covering housing payments. Each provider gets to determine the specific services that they're going to offer to STEP participants based on their agency or their organization's goals, their staffing, and their budget. Now, ODHS, Department of Human Services, does determine eligibility for the STEP program. We collaborate with the Oregon Employment Department to use OED's, Oregon Employment Department's iMatch skills system to relay that eligibility information. So, who's eligible? Well, individuals who are receiving SNAP, it is SNAP ENT after all, individuals who are receiving SNAP and 16 years of age or older. There is no upper age limit. Anyone can engage SNAP and 16 years of age or older. And they cannot be eligible for the TANF jobs program. So if someone is eligible for ODHS's TANF jobs program, the TANF employment and training program, they can't engage in STEP. Just want to highlight a little bit about confidentiality. Confidentiality of participant information is definitely a priority. So that STEP participant information in iMatch Skills, well, of course, the participant has access to it themselves. It is only accessible to staff who have taken several required trainings, such as information security. This is making sure that all staff who are granted access to this participant information are very well versed in the expectations and requirements of confidentiality. I also want to point out then that when we get data to analyze the program or look at outcomes or build our reports that we send to FNS, all of that data is de-identified. We are not using any social security numbers or names or other identifying information in that data analysis and reporting. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about how these contracted service providers determine which services they are going to offer to eligible individuals and how that process works. So the STEP program has a wide menu, a wide variety of services. Here on the slide, you can see just a list of just a handful of the potential STEP services or support services these providers can choose to offer. Could be job search training that can help someone develop a resume or work on their interview skills. It could be maybe an education or a work experience service like career technical education or apprenticeship to help launch a career in the trades. Support services, those are tangible items that could also be provided to these participants to help them meet their goals. Maybe books for a class, gas cards for transportation, interview clothing or a uniform for work, tools for work in the trades. And we can even cover rent or utility payments. So the funding for all of these services, both the services themselves and the supports, that all comes from the United States Department of Agriculture Food and Nutrition Services. So that's USDA FNS. These dollars are awarded annually, so that means the STEP provider contracts are also set up for 1 year at a time. In order to continue to provide services, each provider has to complete an application every year. So every year they're thinking already about what their program looks like in way in advance. We run our program on the federal fiscal year, so that's October 1st through September 30th. Uh, each one of these providers has to complete a proposal. We send it out at the end of January and it's due back to us by April 15th. So that is a lot of planning many, many months in advance. All of those proposals from those providers, all of their written information, all of their budgets, we submit that to FNS for final approval in our Oregon SNAP ENT state plan in August. All of the federal funding approval, all of the contracts with the providers have to be in place in September so they can continue those services for STEP participants October 1st. It is a quick turnaround. So here's where you come in. We're inviting tribal leaders to formally consult by reviewing and providing feedback on that provider proposal. So that impacts service delivery as well as the state plan, like I mentioned. The proposal is developed and revised every single year to make sure that we're aligning with any new federal requirements. And like I mentioned, it's distributed at the end of January. There's two pieces. One is the narrative, ask providers to describe how their program is operating, how their internal processes work, how they're engaging with their local communities, and of course, which services they're offering. Uh, Reminder, providers do operate in all areas of the state, and participants can be tribal members or reside on tribal lands. The second piece is the budget, really a line by line description of any costs and justification for those costs. So, tribal leaders are invited to review both pieces of the proposal to provide feedback and suggestions on how these questions are structured and what providers have to answer. Really, this input is so vital to make sure the programming is accessible, that it's relevant, and that it's supporting tribes' needs. So I'm going to review just a few key pieces in the proposal narrative. That's the written section. I'm just highlighting the current draft as we're still working to make adjustments and implement any feedback that you provide. So first, we're going to look at sector strategies. So these are really focused approaches to building a skilled workforce within a specific industry or sector. So this means that the workforce boards you can see on the slide here, there's several across the state. They bring together employers and educators and other interested parties to really identify the needs of a specific industry. So maybe certain knowledge requirements or skill requirements for an industry. And then they align training programs to fit the job demands of that region. So if you're looking at the map, in the East Cascades Workforce Board area, that's kind of that central line right in the middle. There are two primary sector strategies for that area. So you can see that's construction and healthcare. To make sure that these proposed step services offered by each provider are thoughtfully developed, and we really want to make sure that participants are prepared for a career in a locally needed field. So providers are asked to speak to how their programs align with these sector strategies. Uh, on the right side of this slide, you can see the two questions that we're asking to prompt this information. So one is, which sector strategies will your program target? Pretty direct. And two, how do your service components, those services like job search training or career technical education, how do those services really prepare individuals for careers that align with the sector strategies? Now, we're open to feedback and suggestions on how to make sure we're considering sector alignment for the STEP provider services. If we're missing questions or information in this section that can help better inform how these services can meet the needs of tribal members, please let us know. Now I'm going to move into questions about the individuals the provider will be offering services to. So on this slide, you can see we're asking about the counties in which the organization is going to offer STEP services and the target population for those counties. That section is a requirement in the SNAP ENT state plan. So we ask providers first to speak about their intended target population, and then we ask them to dive a little bit deeper and think about how they can support underserved populations in meeting their specific needs. We do recognize that an organization's target population might be pretty similar to the underserved population, but it's essential for providers to really thoughtfully approach their service delivery model to address any historical or present disparities in access. Again, like I mentioned, Oregon is really committed to delivering a high quality ENT program that demonstrates the focus on equity, on inclusion, and equal opportunity for anyone who is served. We do understand that the best ENT programs really promote that equitable access and remove barriers and effectively support all participants to make sure that they're getting the skills, that they're getting the credentials they need to succeed in the workforce, all while they're maintaining the access to much needed nutrition assistance. So additional questions asked of providers about those underserved populations are also shown here on that slide. One, which underserved populations will your organization provide services to? And two, how do you engage with the communities that you're serving to examine how different populations, such as Native or Indigenous peoples, are impacted by the services being offered? Tribal leaders, I just want to invite you to take a moment to review these questions and let us know if you have any thoughts or ideas or questions or feedback on how we can more effectively prompt and encourage these providers to consider how their programming impacts their communities, impacts the local area, and how it's easily accessible for anyone who's eligible for or interested in the services. The service component section is all about which services the providers choose to offer. So the questions here on the slide are just some of the required pieces of information. They're detailed questions really at the heart of what the organizations are proposing, and each of the answers are pretty vital for the policy team to review and understand and incorporate into the state plan. So these providers have to complete several questions for each service they plan to offer. We call them service components. So job search training, career technical education, that kind of thing. These questions include details like is shown on the slide, and we're asking providers to speak about how the services meet the program definition, what specific activities are going to be included, and what the person is going to gain or learn. We're also asking about what ages they serve or geographic area or how long folks typically engage in that service and so much more. But we're always open to feedback on how to get better information about those specific services providers are choosing to offer. Now, some of the questions are required to enter data into the state plan. Others are just helpful for the for the policy team to speak to the different step opportunities across the state. And it this information really helps to inform how the services look in real life, how they support those who are engaging. And again, if you have ideas or suggestions on maybe how to streamline this section or additional questions that should be asked, please let us know. I'm going to cover just a little bit of the budget. It's an Excel document. It has so many different tabs. Each of the tabs has a specific focus, maybe like program and administration costs, like step staff salary or office supplies, or support service items for each specific item. Now, I'm just going to go over a couple of these. The first one is this budget justification tab. This tab has changed throughout the years, but the intent really remains the same. Providers are asked to speak to their costs, like how they were calculated, what the costs include, details about how the items are used for step, and basically it's like your math teacher might have said when you were in school, you have to show your work. So maybe someone reported a $500 estimated cost for office supplies. Here on the budget justification tab, they would provide information about the specific types of items. Maybe that's in-house copying and printing costs or notebooks or posters to showcase their STEP program. They would then speak to how the expenses are directly related to STEP and detail exactly how they arrived at the dollar amount. That helps the provider justify their requested cost, and it helps the SNAP E&T team justify the cost to FNS. Now, like I mentioned, the tab has morphed and changed over the years. And if you have a way that we can better ask these questions or any different questions we should be asking on that, please let us know. I'm not going to cover a ton else on the budget tab, but I do want to highlight one additional feature, and that's the funding sources tab. So providers do have to have sufficient funding to cover the upfront costs of their STEP program expenses. So they're outlining really the total cost, like that $500 in office supplies. But we're most concerned about the contracted or the 50% reimbursement costs, and we're making sure they have sufficient funding to cover this. We call those match funds. Now, match fundings cannot be from a federal source. This means organizations can't match the federal funds, which is the source of the reimbursements, with federal funds. Some common match fund sources we see are from local school districts or city grants, fundraising, donation, that kind of thing. Just want to highlight here, I think it's really important that our STEP provider network currently, community-based organizations, government agencies, community college, four-year university, they all get a 50% reimbursement. However, if a tribe chooses to become a contracted STEP provider, they receive a 75% reimbursement of STEP costs. I am very open to any questions from tribes who might be interested in joining the STEP Provider Network. Just let me know. If you have questions about that, about the STEP program in general, or if you have feedback regarding the budget template, or would like to talk more about just available STEP services in your area. My contact information is here on the slide. Just want to thank you again for viewing this presentation. I know it takes a lot of time. I really appreciate your time, your attention, and I'm really looking forward to hearing any thoughts or ideas that you might have on our provider proposal. Thank you.